guys, it's Pure Nor Ice Cream Bar. So it's not Thursday, but I'm sitting here because I really didn't want to move my tripod. So this is gonna be another character video, but I want to kind of diverge a little bit from the path that I had been going on, talking about Citrus's backstory, yes. And I wanted to, for a second, talk about his journey as a physical form, as a ball joint doll, as a piece of sculpture, as a work of art. Personally, I think it's really interesting to see how a character's development is influenced by being in a physical form in some way, especially a ball joint doll, which is something you can like move and pose and change their face. And maybe as I'm talking, some of you will realize that you've had similar situations. Maybe some of you already have things to say about this topic, so I hope you find it interesting and not super boring. Yeah! So let's start from the beginning. Once upon a time, I was ordering an L almost 10 years ago, and I knew it came with a free event head, and that was going to be Citrus. Which at the time I did not know. I didn't really have a character planned out for the event head, but I did have a character that I thought I was going to get in doll form. I never did, but his name was Nikolai. Fun fact, he was named after my favorite composer at the time. Coolest kid! Nikolai was sort of a Frankenstein character, right? He was kind of like Frankenstein, only less flawed and more just straight up sociopathic. And I thought, you know, if I get Nikolai, Frankenstein had a monster, Nikolai should have a monster, maybe I could make this free event head into Nikolai's monster. But until that happened, I would just use it to practice face-ups. I wasn't too attached to the way the head looked, and so it didn't really matter to me what happened to the head. So the time came, I received my L and the event head, and I went ahead and practiced face-ups on it, and I started doing blue and black. I don't know why, maybe those were just the colors I had, but something about the blue and black was like working for me. And it's interesting how many circumstances kind of came together to make Citrus into like the first stage 1, Citrus level 1, because I was also planning another doll that I ended up never getting, and for that doll I wanted a blue wig. At the time I was also looking and going on Den of Angels a lot, and a bunch of people, for whatever reason, were doing these horror, not necessarily gore, just horror mods with like tentacles coming out of people's faces. I thought it was the coolest thing ever, and I was like, dude, Citrus is supposed to be some kind of monster. He should totally have crazy mods. So I wanted to get into that. So the first thing I did was try and open his eyes and take away his vampire teeth, and after doing that, I had this moment, the eureka moment, which I'm sure many of you have had before. It's like when you're trying to take a picture and all of a sudden you find the perfect angle, or you're painting something and all of a sudden you lay down a certain color. All of a sudden you know, that is what I'm supposed to be doing. And that's kind of what happened with Citrus. All of a sudden I opened his eyes, his expression totally changed, and I was like, oh my gosh! That is who you are. I've figured it out. I have solved the mystery. And from that moment on, he changed. He was no longer supposed to be the monster of Nikolai, though you will hear the name Nikolai again in connection with Citrus. Not in exactly the same way. Citrus kind of became his own thing, and he became this very visual character with a personality but without a backstory, which was totally fine and totally worked for me at the time, because at the time I was trying to write a whole little novel thing about Daichi and my L, who at that point was called Eri, and like he had a younger brother, and it was all kinds of stuff. You know, everyone else, I was like, oh my god, but would you wear these shoes? But would you even wear these shoes? And with Citrus, I was just like, hey, it's colors, Citrus likes colors, let's put him in these shoes. And that worked for a couple years. But things changed. I started to grow up and mature, and all of a sudden I wanted something different in my storytelling than what I had been doing. I wanted characters that were extremely well developed and felt like real people to me. And over the years I've tried to continuously go back to their stories and fix things that weren't quite right, that made them feel a little too Mary Sue-ish or overpowered or whatever it is. But this really started changing for me when I was going into college. I realized I wanted to reshell Citrus because not only were my desires in my characters changing, but also my collection was changing, and I was getting more and more dolls that were more in the semi-realistic fashion and less in the this is supposed to be the slopey nose of Lutz dolls, the exaggerated proportions fashion, and Citrus was by far my most exaggerated. He was super cute, but I just felt like he didn't fit. He wasn't in proportion with the rest of my collection. So I wanted to reshell him, and I also wanted to think more of a backstory for him. In doing that, I didn't want to lose him as a character because he had been important to me as that very visual character throughout the whole time I've had him. So he ended up being a big challenge for me. He ended up really challenging my previously held belief that I still mostly hold on to. Very visual characters are usually not well-developed characters. I mostly blame anime for that because they often have really visually beautiful characters without developing them in a way that is satisfactory to me. I already really loved Citrus as a character and I didn't want to lose him or any part of him, so I was forced to go into that place and try to explain why does he look like this? For what reason could he possibly be looking the way that he does? I ended up coming up to not the idea but really the conclusion, the only conclusion that made sense, was that he was so startlingly visual because he's hiding something. So Citrus was reshelled and his backstory has been in the makings. And I guess the main thing for me here is there's a definite connection for me between Citrus as a ball joint doll and Citrus as a character. I think it is most pronounced in what I mentioned in the last video, that Citrus is a shapeshifter. His whole species are shapeshifters, but not shapeshifting in a matter of seconds, or in overnight even, but over a period of years where the changes are slow. Slow journey of, you know, who are you, what are you, why are you? And I think that's a definite reflection of my physical time spent with this actual object who has changed from one thing to another, not just in character, but in actual physical form. That just shows how strong that relationship is, at least for Citrus, that his being a ball joint doll, his being in a 3D physical form, has absolutely, without doubt, affected his character, and his character would not have become that had he not been in this form. Now, I could probably talk about that relationship for 14 hours, but these are supposed to be mini character videos, and I think by mini, I just mean they're not all 20 minutes long. Anyway, I hope you guys were interested by that. I hope it wasn't the super boringest thing you've ever heard. I am excited to hear if anyone else has experienced a similar thing where they're like, yes, definitely having this creature object, which is apparently on your shoulder, has influenced their fictional characterness. Like, whoa, crazy. So, that's all I got for you today, and I will talk to all of you guys later. Thanks for watching. Bye!